Hey everyone, welcome back in. Betsperts Golf here for the 2024 Wells Fargo Championship, coming off of uneventful. I don't know. The final hole, I guess, was entertaining over at the CJ Cup. Byron Nelson. We got Brooks Koepka winning on live, but we are back to the top of the board, Ron, except one in particular here for the signature event, Wells Fargo. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, yeah, good to be here. Yeah, another first-time winner yesterday, Taylor Pendrith. So yeah, there was, you know, people complain about weak fields, and it seems like we've had a lot of these first-time winners, and it's either like a signature event or you get kind of a tournament like we had yesterday. So kind of back and forth here, but yeah, this week is really interesting because I don't know if we've ever had the week before a major. I think maybe a few times back in 2020 when they had the WGC, but it's pretty rare you have an event this strong, directly before a major. So, and especially on a course that's going to be somewhat similar to Valhalla that they're going to see, at the PGA Championship. So, almost like a warm-up test, but it still means a lot this week too. So, yeah, strong field, small field. So yeah, excited to see what happens this week without Scotty.
Yeah, and without Scotty, I think is a big piece for us in the betting space because obviously it's the last couple of months has been a decision at the top with Scotty or not to Scotty, considering how well he's playing and having to make decisions at 3-1, which is a very, very difficult decision when you're betting golf outrights. But a track that has hosted majors, 2017 PGA. JT winning that one. Obviously, we've had the President's Cup here in the last handful of years. It's a big boy track, and like you said, a nice tune-up for Valhalla next week and getting ready for that too. The Scotty element in terms of his availability for that becomes pretty interesting. We've been waiting for the Burns baby. We've been waiting for the Scheffler baby, and we're still feel like Burns is in this field. We're still kind of waiting for that to happen and interested to see what happens with that next week. But for now, we get to make a decision at the top of the board in a strong 68-man field, no cut events without Scotty, which I think is an important piece right now because again, it's one guy, but man, he's absolutely rolling right now. So very interesting to see what happens there. Taylor Pendrith punching his ticket to this after first career win, knocked on the door for a while. Poor Ben Coles. I mean, just no birdies, no bogeys all day. No one's bogeyed 18 all day. Goes to 18 with a one-shot lead and cannot seal the deal. Winning golf tournaments, if you're not Scotty Scheffler, pretty hard to do. And Cole's obviously proved that here. So let's take a look at the opening odds board and let's build an early look at a model here for Quail Hollow. Here we'll share odds from our friends over at the lines. Just look, shop around. These things are moving quick. And, again, just a snapshot of some of the books that are out there currently. FanDuel's usually in. I haven't seen if they're in yet, and maybe it just hasn't updated here. They're typically not last to play, but I don't know if you happen to have Bet Rivers offers. They took it away for a little while. Now they're back to offering that enhanced market. If you want to, win only market, which is nice. You get a couple extra points here and there. Rory at the top. Rory obviously coming off of a team win, and performed well at the Zurich last week. Leading up to that, has won at Quail Hollow before. Obviously, fits his course. We can get into some of those specs here. Xander as well, obviously, could not chase down Wyndham Clark, who's your defending champion last year. Played really good golf, a nice course fit. Ludwig, this is where we're at with Ludwig. Just continues to roll out of bed and finish inside the top 20. Of course, that long and straight is rewarded. Short game, I mean, kid's got the whole bag, 12-1. Feels like I don't want to say days of Ludwig being 20 or higher or over, but not in the current form. Those are gone. Your defending champ, Wyndham Clark, 18. As I mentioned, that's a 20 at Bet Rivers in the enhanced market, which is an interesting number. And that feels like an appropriate top four, Ron, based off of current form and where we are at in a non-Scotty event here. So you kind of jump down here. Homa, obviously, multiple-time winner, both at this track and this event. Obviously, he won the Potomac version in 2022 when we took the year off when we had the President's Cup here. Hovland back in the field, Colin Morikawa, Hideki Matsuyama, kind of rounding out your top 30 here at the top. So Talk to me about this course, Ron. Quail Hollow, again, the track we know. Definitely a nice change of pace after a week at Craig Ranch.
Yeah, so we're getting to a course that's almost 7,600 yards this week. It's a tree-lined parkland, par 71, kind of similar to courses like Torrey Pines, South Bay Hill. Kind of presents this challenging combination of length and difficult scoring conditions. It's the third longest and the fifth toughest scoring course on tour. It's got the sixth longest combined par fours and fives. And so, yeah, you've got kind of rolling terrain this week, strategically placed water hazards. The greens are some of the toughest green complexes on tour. Very firm usually, kind of fast, getting up to usually by 13 on the stimp meter on the weekend. When you look at the agronomy this week, it's kind of a 50-50 mix on the greens of Bermuda and Poa trivialis. So this is one of those weeks where I'm kind of looking just at putting in general, and probably more specifically getting into performance on fast greens, since these are well known for their speed. Difficult approach course because of the green complexes and kind of the undulations. So yeah, it's going to be a test, and we've seen, kind of like you said, when you look at these past winners here, going back last year to Wyndham Clark, this was kind of the tournament that took him kind of on the rise that he's been on to a top 10 player in the world. Obviously, Rory, he's averaged 2.34 strokes per round in his 42 career rounds here. So, this is one of Rory's course history places that he loves. You go back down the line, look at Max Homa, Jason Day. So, yeah, this is a course where total driving, like these guys are just long and straight off the tee. And that's pretty much one of the foundations for success this week.
Yeah, no, that's a good call for sure. I mean, Wyndham it's crazy to think this was his first win last year, and then what's happened since in Wyndham's game. Obviously, winning an Open, and then just continuing to contend in big boy fields at big boy tracks, just kind of propelled him moving forward. And had been playing good leading up to that, and kind of captured that there. So yeah, the agronomy stuff is interesting because it is like going back and looking at your preview from last year too. Bermuda everywhere. But at this time of year, we're still not full bloom in Bermuda. So I'd be very careful on, splitting anything out from a Bermuda standpoint, especially putting wise, because that's not necessarily perfectly what you're getting this week. So I think you make a great point looking at just maybe if you're looking at putting, it'd be probably putting or scoring in general versus anything specifically to, grass type. So good call out there. Looking at just last handful of years, you can see, some guys don't come here very often. Distance is mattered a ton, as you mentioned. And you look at last year's leaderboard. You got a Brendan Todd in there. You got a Denny McCarthy. These guys lost strokes tee to green, barely, but they did, and just putted their faces off. So not a super sustainable way to have success at Quail Hollow. You need to be tee to green. Again, a major type venue, right? So you need to be thinking that's a major type field. You need to have the whole bag really this week to get it done. So we'll back out of this and start to look at some other stuff here and see what we could do and build. Ron mentioned some stuff. Obviously, you need to be informed tee to green. You need to have some success on some scoring, difficult scoring conditions. Because if you look at last year's leaderboard, it was kind of a two-dog race at the top. Wyndham wins at 19 under, which is not super indicative when you look at the rest of the board again. When you go down to, a cluster of guys at T8, 10 shots off that pace. You were inside the top 20 or, T21 at 6 under. So, yeah, your winner was at 19 under. But from a scoring condition standpoint, Ron, I would classify this as a, difficult to very difficult scoring conditions. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, for sure. So definitely in the rabbit hole, looking at those difficult, like you said, conditions, and definitely strong field again this week as well.
Okay, yeah, let's start there. So we'll go in here. If you're seeing the rabbit hole for the first time, check it out. It is the best tool that you can use to model golf. I think it's stats that you will not find anywhere else. The ability to chop this data up from the PGA Tour in ways you cannot imagine. Pretty straightforward, but if you are watching on YouTube, watch it on Twitter, you can DM us if you have any questions. Otherwise, if you're a subscriber, you can watch the tutorial here, directly message us on Discord. We can help you walk through it. Very, very straightforward here in terms of how to use it. But again, new for anyone first time, and this can be intimidating. Modeling, even when it's can be made this easy, can be a little bit confusing for some. But we definitely want to help you out and make this a little bit more user friendly than anything else you've experienced here. So we'll go into the conditions section here. Let's mess around with some stuff, and we'll look at some of these things. We'll start with difficult and very difficult scoring conditions. Again, this is a long course. Field strength is very strong. I always try to exercise caution. I would not start to overfit when you select too many of these things all at once. I would kind of section them off a little bit. Take a shot at difficult, very difficult. Take a shot at long courses. Take a shot at field strength. Mess around with it versus just kind of adding them all at once. Otherwise, you're going to get a sample of rounds played that's pretty insignificant in terms of sample size. So let's see here. We'll look at the last 12 months, getting a decent amount of rounds for these guys, all rounds on very difficult and difficult scoring conditions. Top of the board here is, again, your top two last year, Xander and Wyndham, Rory right behind, Max Homa, Victor Hovland, Tommy Fleetwood, Ludwig, and Cam Young. Kind of your, again, a lot of your top of the board here. To add something to your mixed condition model, all you need to do is hit this plus. You can make a note if you would like. I will make a note. Very difficult scoring. You can see who has performed well in those conditions over the last couple of years. This is actually just last year, but again, you can mess around with the time frame as much as you would like. But again, we're getting 36 rounds. I think that's enough for me to feel like that's significantly statistically relevant here. And Ron said, let's take a look at some of the other things that Ron mentioned here. We look at field strength. Again, you're going to get a sense of scoring conditions there as well. You're going to get a sense of, major championship golf or designated event, small field golf. Again, I like, I think Ron highlighted this early on. By doing both strong and very strong, we're basically just sussing out weak field events, your standard tour event. And I think that's what we're trying to capture here. So we'll look at who's performed well in strong and very strong fields. We'll see what we get here. Let's see, all seasons, last 6 months. We'll back this out a little bit. We'll go a little bit longer. We'll go 18 months. We make sure we're not double counting. You get a nice sample size for guys here. Again, top of the board. Some similar names. Xander again, Rory, Vic, Cantley, Tommy, Wyndham Clark, Colin Morikawa, Max Homa, Hideki Matsuyama, and Matthew Fitzpatrick. I'm going to add that here too. Go strong fields. All right. What else are you thinking, Ron? You want to look at long courses?
Yeah, for sure. So do the same. Go long, very long, and you don't necessarily have to do this for this one, but I'm also looking at this is another no cut event. I think every signature event the rest of the year is pretty much no cut. And again, you only have 70 players, so you're looking at. You could also, if you wanted to look at field size, we also have the option to look at small field as well.
Yep, great point. Yeah. So let's do that. We'll back it out again. We'll do 18 to see long, very long courses. To me, in this instance, what I'm trying to capture in the sense of long, very long, I think tee to green or ball striking is probably more relevant than total, right? Because total is going to be us capturing some elements of how players are performing on the green, and super relevant. And you look last year, Gary Woodland, basically strokes gained tee to green, just toe to toe with Wyndham Clark, finished 11 shots off the lead. So it's not like strokes gained total and putting doesn't matter. But like you're not going to have typically that putting performance that we had from Gary last year. And if anyone bets Gary with any regularity over the last handful of years knows that that's definitely in the range of outcomes. But let's look at tee to green here. I think that tells a better story of what we're trying to actually capture here. And again, this is a very Tony Finau friendly statistic because you can see the bright red popping for him over here from a strokes gained putting standpoint, which is not great, but it gets you a sense of how he's performing there too. Some other names here in the top that, again, the aforementioned Gary Woodland, Hideki, not great in this scenario. Again, 61 round sample over the last 18 months on long courses. The putting has not been great for Hideki, but again, like that isn't really relevant to what we're trying to capture in this data. So let's go ahead and look at strokes gained tee to green on long that to me is relevant. So think through this a little bit when you're going through, and this is why the modeling thing could be tough, especially when I think a lot of these conditional things from a high level, like we're talking about, looking at field strength, looking at course length, all these things I think matter a bunch, but think about the statistic that you're actually using and think about what you're actually trying to tell story-wise by capturing that data. And I think tee to green or ball striking in this scenario makes a ton of sense. All right, let's look at some let's look at some other stuff off the tee. Ron, you mentioned total driving. And again, the ability to model total driving is unique to the rabbit hole. Total driving, if you're not familiar, is a flawed stat, but useful. It's a capturing your ranking in driving distance and driving accuracy. The more I feel every week, Ron, I feel like I hate driving accuracy a little bit more every week. Just I feel like because it's such a singular binary yes, no stat, fairway, no fairway. And I don't think it's really super predictive. So like that worries me with my thoughts around total driving. But I also talk me through that time. Tell me why this is a total driving week.
Yeah, so no, you make a good point because first of all, I think driving distance gets favored this week simply because of the length. And another reason is if you look at the driving accuracy here, we're sitting at about 54%, which is 7% below the tour average. Okay, but if you look at the margin, if you miss the fairway, and compared to whether you can hit it on the green or not, the margin is right at tour average. And one of the reasons for that is the rough is only 2 inches. So the rough here, even though you kind of have this Rye Bermuda mix and it's kind of 50-50 because, the Bermuda's still coming in. The rough is just not that penal. And so I completely agree with you that I think total driving is something I'll look at. But for me, I'm going to capture and kind of look at, even a higher percentage of driving distance. And one way you can do that is you can still, instead of taking the total driving, you can instead capture, say for me, I'll take 75% driving distance and then 25% accuracy and kind of able to kind of put my own weights in instead of going, just a straight 50-50 mix.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. That's the way that you can use the rabbit hole to capture what you're trying to capture with total driving, but do it in a different way. Cause I would think should be weighted heavily to distance versus accuracy. Look at last year. I mean, Wyndham won, hit 41% of the fairways for the event last year. Now, again, some other guys perform really well. Like a guy, like I mentioned, like a Brandon Todd who found himself into the top 10, hit 73%. But that's how Brandon Todd has to win, right? He has to paint fairways, put himself in position, and then putt his face off, especially on a track like this. That's not really what we're talking about in a top of the board 68-man field event, to actually go out and win this tournament. So the fact that Wyndham was able to kind of do that here and get himself around, now he led in approach and he led in greens and regulation. So like he's still the ball striking, the approach game was dialed in, and he got himself so far down there from a distance standpoint that he was able to take advantage. So definitely distance over total driving or anything accuracy wise here this week. I have a hard time sometimes with good carry week, good driving distance week. Do you have a sell on carry or is it a driving distance week?
Yeah, for me, the fairways are somewhat narrow. You do have a few dog legs. And the reason for me, actually, I still think it matters somewhat is you do have, you still want to be on the right side of the fairway with some of the trees that are, kind of giving you a good angle to the green. For me, carry distance is not as important this week as just flat driving distance. Because, this is a week where, because the rough is so low, even if they do get into that rough, and even if you look at birdie or better percentage, when you look at scoring, it's almost even, as far as, when you're in the rough, the margin is even on the positive side as far as, how often you make a birdie from the rough. So I think that's another reason for not necessarily bomb and gouge, but just guys who are just, that you can blast away off the tee and you're not really worried as much about the Bermuda this week. I think just with it being still a lot of ryegrass, makes it a little easier.
Yep. Okay. Good call. Yeah. Sometimes there are events where it's really clear, where it's, maybe a carry week and then, driving distance too, and the ability to capture both. You can Again, you can add both and you can weigh them differently if you want to go ahead and do that. So the option that you have there as well. For me, I still just will continue to bang the drum for any time you're wanting accuracy. Distance from the edge of the fairway just tells a significantly better story. We'll go back continuously to Houston just a few weeks prior, where Scotty in that field was like, 50, 60th in driving in accuracy, first in distance from the edge of the fairway. So again, when you miss, how far off the fairway are you missing? Are you spraying it? Are you putting yourself in the trees? Or are you just kind of rolling through into the first cut and just off? Like, that's not super problematic to me. I think it tells a significantly better story. So
one thing I will pay really close attention to in this off the tee category, though, is good drive percentage. And this is mostly because the green complexes on approach are so tough to hit. And because this is one of the, when you look at the average good drive percentage is only 76% here, which the tour average is 82%. So that's one of the things I'll look at. And just instead of just looking at greens and regulation, which is, kind of the old school stat, I think good drive percentage, which takes into account just how often can you get it to the green, even if you hit it into the rough off the tee. So for me, that's something I'm going to weigh pretty heavily this week.
I like it. And you can put some filters on it too. You can look at good drive percentage on, difficult scoring conditions. You can look at good drive percentage on long or very long courses. I think that's probably a telling way to look at it too. And we can do both and just, again, mess around with the weights, play around with it. That's a good call. All right, here, let's look approach. Obviously, approach key. I mentioned that fact that Wyndham hit 41% of his fairways last year and still won here by margin pretty significantly. When you can have a nice putting week, and really, for the most part, everyone inside the top 20 was gaining on the greens, but you have to be able to set yourself up in those scenarios. How are we doing approach this week? Obviously, we can do approach in a bunch of different ways. It's the one stat or stat group that we would probably be comfortable double counting. We somewhat are by putting in tee to green stuff, by putting in some of the other stuff we have. But again, fine with it because it is the most sticky stat. What are some of the key ways that you want to hone in on approach this week?
Yeah, I'll for sure look at, one of the filters we have is when you can look at, courses that are tough on approach, difficult, very difficult. So it's not like the most difficult course for approach, but again, because of the green complexes, the average proximity to the hole here is, almost 37 feet from the fairway, which is one of the toughest on tour. And so, I'll definitely try to capture that. And I might even just look at, overall proximity. That's one thing we have that option too. And for sure, I'll go to the, getting into the 175 plus range. We're going to have a lot of long irons this week. And so, on these firm greens, which is another thing, we actually have the filter where you can go, see what it looks like on firm greens as well. So yeah, I think long irons are going to be maybe not as much as, driving distance. But how we all know how important approach is. And so I think for sure capturing that range is key.
Like it. So mess around, just see what happens. We'll do overall proximity. I'm in the last 6 months. I'm getting around 40 rounds for most of these guys. Let's just do it. Not a stat we use often, so I'd like to see what happens here. We'll do prox last 6 months. And then, as you mentioned here, we do some of the fairway, and we should capture both. We'll look at the fairway and rough proximity from those ranges. See last year, yes, significantly up. So even 150 to 175 was a little bit more than tour average last year. 175 to 200 was significantly up over a tour average event. 200 to 225 plus as well, a good amount. Same thing with 250 plus. So we have that bucketed at 200. So you can look at all of those if you like it. Again, the option is available to add all of them and mess around with the weights. How much do you think that's important versus just looking at, say, greens and reg, overall proximity, strokes gained approach, approach on, gaining on approach where it's difficult scoring conditions, all these different ways to do it can be very overwhelming. But again, you'd rather have the option to be able to do it than to not. So we'll look at fairway 175 to 200, and then we'll do the same off the rough. This is a fairway.
And I get this question a lot from people who are used to doing it, where they don't have it separated by fairway and rough, and they just want the overall proximity. And so what I tell people is, you just have the ability here where you can, if you know the average percentage from a certain range is 65%, you can actually go 65% from the fairway and then 35% from the rough. And so this just allows you to capture it based on, the course percentages more, instead of just like an overall fairway and rough combined. And I'm sure,
Yep.
I think in the future we will have the option where you can, just look at it overall. But I think this just, for the nerds out there, allows you to get kind of really granular from these approach ranges from the fairway and or the rough.
Could not agree more. We'll probably eventually still have, like you'll be able to pick long par fives or, long par fours and, mess around with some stuff that are specific to, par fours, 450 plus or such. I think this allows you, as it currently stands, to be able to get even a little bit more granular and tell, again, a little bit more detail into what you're doing. So you got to think through it a little bit more. And I understand that that's not always the easiest way, but we'll again rather have you have the option to have it than to not. So we captured rough 175 to 200 plus. Same thing with fairway. Around the green, again, these are, you mentioned around the green percentage or greens and reg percentage down versus a normal field event. And top of the board is hidden greens and reg, but you are going to have to scramble a little bit around here. How do you want to capture this the best way?
Yes, scrambling is kind of really important here, considering the missed greens that players are going to face this week. So yeah, I'm definitely kind of looking. I'll do some around the green, obviously with all the long irons, the par fives. There's going to have to be some around the green play that is important this week. I'll probably not divide it up by scrambling as far as rough or from the short grass this week. I'll just kind of go overall scrambling. One thing I like to do is also, when you have these difficult courses, they're all have the same, not the exact same green types, but they're all pretty difficult around the green. And so I'll even capture the difficult conditions, difficult, very difficult, and I'll look at it from the scrambling approach. And so that kind of gives me some insight into how players perform on similar courses as they're going to see at Quail Hollow this week.
Sorry, I was muted there. Gaining around the green, difficult, very difficult. How do you want to?
Yeah, I'll put that in for sure, and I'll kind of let that stand alone, and I'll probably even look at scrambling with those two. So I'll combine those two together. And another thing we have that's really cool is you can actually look at around the green proximity, which is basically the same thing as approach proximity, except you're looking at it with the short game, and just kind of let you know which players kind of chip it close to the hole. And especially, you got some bad putters out there who, you got some guys who are good at this stat. You see, a Siwoo Kim who really struggles putting, but he can kind of makes up for it when he can hit it close, and kind of get himself out of trouble around the green here.
Yeah, this is, I have the last 12 months filter on. You're getting some of that, again, because the sample is so small. When we add the difficult, very difficult, you're getting, you're getting pre-fired short game coach for Victor Hovland here on his around the green stuff for sure. So probably not currently, this is sometimes telling to me too. It's like, all right, well, I know what's going on with Vic. So do I want to give Vic, add him to the rabbit hole in a stat where he's currently second, which is not really indicative of where his current form is. So these are, things to play around. Again, confirmation bias. I wouldn't necessarily always overrule with your brain. I would trust the numbers. But again, we're trying to maybe overfit a little bit. We're getting a stat that is not really indicative of what's going on with Vic. I would say around the green, strokes gained around the green probably tells me a little bit of a better story here. But again, Finau is going to get a nice bump for that, not capturing any of his putting woes, which have been really problematic. So scrambling 2. Pretty good there. So I'm going to add scrambling in this scenario. How about scoring to wrap us up, Ron? What do we want to do?
Yeah, this is a week again where you can go birdie or better percentage overall, but for me, like you're trying to capture the difficult conditions, and so what I'll probably do to give a little more sample is I'll go with both difficult filters, but I'll also go with average scoring conditions. So kind of take out completely the weak courses, and I'll look at birdie or better percentage with those three filters on. And definitely, I would probably do the same for bogey avoidance. Obviously, avoiding bogeys and guys who can scramble and kind of survive on these really challenging, especially par four holes, is going to be key this week. So I'll kind of try to weed out the easy courses and look at both birdies and avoiding bogeys from that angle.
I like it. It's about 60 rounds for most of these guys. Again, familiar names here at the top: Wyndham Clark, Rory McIlroy, Victor Hovland, Ludwig, Adam Scott, Nick Dunlap. Small sample, but can fill it up. And Nick Dunlap was, we've seen so far has performed best on some of the friendlier tracks with PGA West and the Amex and what he did last week, which I think makes a lot of sense. We'll look at that birdie or better in this scenario. And I'll do the same with bogey avoidance, as Ron mentioned there too. Take a look at some of the names here, some of the guys that avoid those, some overlap towards the top, but some of the names that we saw there, which makes a lot of sense. All right. I think that's a good first run through. Let's see what we get here. Let's simply hit this create mixed condition model button. We'll give it a name. Let's see. I think I got a couple of old things on here. Maybe not. Yeah, I had some stuff I was messing around with yesterday. Let's see what we did here. Greens and reg, long, short off the tee. All right. Yeah, I think this is what we did. Yeah, look at us. We added 10 things this morning. We got into it. This is first look. Cost Noonan. Let's see what we want to do weight wise. What do we want to make a little bit smaller? What do we want to weigh a little bit less than normal? We can leave it as is. Again, you can see the ability to mess around with the weights here to get to 100. But anything you want to do a little bit less?
Take maybe. Yeah, since we have approach caption in different areas, I'd probably take overall proximity down to maybe 5%. Maybe add a little bit more to the total and difficult scoring, the top one. But yeah, you can. It's definitely that's the beauty of creating your own model, is you can kind of read the reports about the course. Look into the past history, the data, and kind of come to your own conclusions and then kind of weigh it however you want to. And I'll even run different ones with different categories and different stats, and put it all together.
Yep, I would mess around that. I'd probably do something different here with the proximity ranges, to be honest. But I think we're good for now. We'll save this here. Also want to show folks too, you can download any of these into a CSV. Simply click on this right here. If you'd like to take it over to Excel, add a bunch of models, do a bunch of different stuff, you can go ahead and do that as well. You can go into this view expert rankings and you can see stuff from other folks here. You can see Andy Lack, Inside Golf Podcast, his model here for Quail Hollow, Matt Vicenzi, Tap In Podcast. You can see his stuff. You'll be able to see models from Ron and myself, Andy Molitor as well. It's a nice little ability to see, hey, what are any stats that they're adding that I wasn't considering or what I should be looking at? I can take it to the next level there and help you kind of build your model out here. But let's see what we get here. The sense that we're going to get Rory or it feels like you're going to get either Rory, Xander, or Ludwig at the top based off of what we get there. Wyndham Clark not too far off as well. So Rory at the top, Ludwig second, Wyndham Clark third, Xander fourth, Hideki fifth, Victor Hovland sixth, Patrick Cantley seventh, Matthew Fitzpatrick 8, Cam Young 9, Max Homa 10 here. Any early thoughts, Ron?
Yeah, those are kind of the elite of the elite. I will say there's I think the Will Zalatoris missing last week is kind of being overblown a little bit, because it pretty much clearly came out that he's not really injured. I think he just had played so much and he was looking for a break. And so, yeah, there's a number, we're talking around 60 out there that is still out there. So, we all know how good Will plays on these tough courses, especially in strong field events. So, he's in North Carolina, obviously, went to Wake Wake Forest, and so got a lot of that in play this week, and so that number is still out there.
Only bet I made so far this morning, just before we went on live, while was waiting for you to come into the room so we can get started, was Will Zalatoris at 60 over at Rivers. So, 55, I think, still out there too if you don't have Rivers at other books. So again, I agree with Ron. I mean, I'd probably take 55, 60 on Will, knowing that he's a little hurt, to be honest.
Yeah.
Just again, knowing what the game is and how he plays in these types of events. Carolina stuff aside is only an added bonus for sure. So yeah, that's a long number. Yeah, and the top of the board, as I said, while we were looking at the odds, that's your top 4 here, top 4 on the odds screen, and they all make sense. I mean, the distance gains for Xander this year are showing up and serving him very, very well. Continues to put himself in position. Again, you just have to make a decision. Am I comfortable with him being 10-1 in the field without Scotty? Same thing, Rory in form, nice course history. Am I comfortable going short of 10? Ludwig doesn't have a ton of reps, but again, feels like he belongs for sure. But you're making a decision at 12-1, so which I don't hate. But again, I have some Ludwig at significantly longer numbers for next week at Valhalla. Feel like sometimes you want to cover that a little bit and feel like, I would hate to feel good about that, 30 on Ludwig next week. And he goes out and pops a win here at Quail Hollow at 12. So yeah, definitely an interesting week. Feels good to have Craig Ranch behind us. Feels good although I've been very comfortable laying and finding creative ways to lay Scotty, because I just not having Scotty when he's in the field has been terrifying. And it's just nice to not even have to consider that this week, so we can make some interesting decisions. But yeah, again, we typically don't put 10 stats in the model, and I feel like we got, I think, a pretty decent first look model for folks this morning to jump in here. Interesting top 10, some names that I'm definitely considering there, kind of rounding out the top 10 as well. So, all right, good stuff. Head over to Betsperts Golf, check everything out. If you want to get access to the rabbit hole yourself, you want to get access to all of Ron's data, you want to get access to all of Ron's content, you need to subscribe, take advantage of that. We have some cheaper ways to do that through partnerships with our friends over at Vivid Picks, which is a DFS pick'em site. You can find information of that on the sites. You can DM us directly at Betsperts Golf on Twitter, Ron at PGA Splits 101, myself at Ryan Noonan. If you have any questions there, get some discounted ability to take you through the next 3 majors. Jump in on that now. Again, let us know if you have questions there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. This is a new channel for us. We've pulled off of the Betsperts company channel to have a golf specific channel. So new channel, subscribe, rate and review, comments, all those things go a long way helping us out. Let us know who you like this week at Quail Hollow. Come back on Tuesday for the betting show with myself at Andy Molitor, and then Ron and Byron the Model Maniac on Wednesday for the DFS show. So appreciate you hanging out with us this morning. Let's win some money here at Quail Hollow, Ron. Good luck to everyone. And we'll see you all very soon.